On today's Lion Academics.
Hello, I'm Amelia from Lion, and today we're going to be talking about the topics that are mentioned in AP Biology. What is AP Biology? AP Biology is basically a test that is made from College Board. It is for high school students from grade 9 to 12, and it is a 3-hour test that is half an hour of MCQ and half an hour of FRQ. It is a test for students to just prepare for advanced college level biology. If you get a good score in AP Biology, such as getting a 4 or a 5, which is 5 is the maximum score you can get, you can actually use them for credit in college, so you can skip your beginning biology class or a certain level of a biology class. So it's really good and useful in the future if you are a STEM major kid. So we're going to be talking about each chapters and what each chapter of the AP Biology curriculum covers. The first one is Unit 1, Chemistry of Life. This mainly is more on the chemistry side than biology. It talks about matters, properties, and you get to learn about the functions of macromolecules. It also focuses on the structures and properties of water and other chemicals. And it is just the beginning phase of chemistry, so it is not as advanced as AP chemistry or your regular chemistry class. It is the beginning and kind of biology related chemistry, so macromolecules and just bonds and things like that. And this is about 8 to 11% of the exam, so that is one good thing to know. Always before you take the AP exam, check the curriculum and check how much of each unit is made of the test, so that it will help you a lot when you study. So Unit 2 consists of cell structure and function. This is mainly just knowing the anatomy of the cell, just knowing what the cell is consisted of, and the functions of each part of the cell. For example, the Golgi asparagus, the function of the mitochondria, what the cell is made out of, and what the difference is between prokaryotes, which is bacteria, and eukaryotes, which is animals. It goes deep into the differences in the cell, and just the anatomy of the cell. And so if a cell has a cell membrane or cell wall, a lot of the questions are a comparison of prokaryotes and eukaryotes, the anatomy of them. So it is very good to know of the whole parts of the cell and what the function is. And this persists 10 to 13% of the exam. So it's a bit bigger than the Unit 1. Just to keep in mind, there are kind of equal parts of almost everything, but some parts may have a little bit more content than the other unit. Unit 3 is cellular genetics. This is how cells interact with the environment, and it kind of shows the function of enzymes and other products. So basically this is mainly, it focuses on how the enzyme functions. For example, ligate, when it meets a substrate, it changes the shape of the enzyme. It goes in details about enzymes, which are actually very important to know because it is later showed in photosynthesis or cellular respiration, which is another content in the AP Biology. And so it kind of gives a beginning open book towards other topics. This unit kind of includes the details of cellular respiration and photosynthesis, which is why it makes sense that it goes into deep dives of the enzymes. So it gives a whole overview of how the photosynthesis cycle works, also what cells are included, such as the cytoplasm and things like that. And also it talks about the cellular response to environmental changes. That's why the whole thing is kind of consistent to reactions and so how plants absorb light, and that's how photosynthesis happens. This part actually consists 12 to 16% of the exam, so it is kind of a huge part compared to other exams. So it is good to kind of know these things in detail, because especially when you're looking into cellular respiration and photosynthesis, there are so many cycles that are involved that you need to know during that's in the cycle, such as the light dependent and independent for photosynthesis while cellular respiration is going on, and then you have the G3P cycles and other very complicated processes that are going on. So this is really detailed. It is one of the most detailed parts of AP Biology, and it is often mentioned a lot in the test questions and especially on the FRQs. So Unit 4 is talking about cell communication and cell growth. This is how cells reproduce and populate. It's kind of important because it talks about certain cell life cycles, such as there is apoptosis where the cell dies. There's the repetition of cell cycles such as mitosis and meiosis. It talks about cellular responses and feedback mechanisms. So the overall cell cycle is 10 to 15% during the exam. It is a bit smaller than the previous Unit 3, where photosynthesis is more involved. Unit 5 is about heredity. Heredity is kind of how genes pass from generations to the next. There's a reason why this comes right after Unit 4, because it talks about meiosis and mitosis that was kind of previously introduced in the previous topic. Since meiosis kind of talk mainly for cell reproduction and is how the sperm and the egg recreates, it's kind of really important to know. This is consisted of 8 to 11% during the exam, and it also talks about Mendelian law genetics, which is basically you get to know Punnett squares and probability of how your genetics are affected from your mom and dad. So it talks about the dominant and recessive gene, where you get to do Punnett squares that determine the percentage whether you have blue eyes or dimples or blonde hair or black hair. So everything about heredity and genetics is in this chapter. Surprisingly, it is not as big as photosynthesis and like cellular respiration. Okay, so this is the basis of biology. So unit 6 talks about gene expression and regulation, and this is just knowing how the DNA and RNA works. And so it kind of talks about how phenotypes are affected by genotypes, and it also talks about mutation and genetic diversity. It is more detailed in terms of like heredity. It shows how these different genes may create a certain like mutation, and also the probability that you learn through Punnett squares from the previous chapter heredity can also be applied here as well. So it is very important to literally know every single aspect of AP Biology, because it's not like how each chapter is different. Each chapter introduces you to a topic that is related to each other. So that is very important to keep in mind. And it also kind of talks about genetic engineering and technology. This takes place about 12 to 16% in the exam. It is kind of huge. It basically builds up your main knowledge for biology. So it is very good to study and know all the tedious processes of everything. Now, Unit 7, natural selection. That is one of the most easiest parts of AP Biology because it's not as detailed as like you have to know the cell anatomy or like the functions of each cell or like the cycles or anything more complicated. It's literally natural selection, meaning like evolution. So it is more of the simpler topics. It's mainly kind of related to ecology as well. And it just shows how like the original life in Earth evolved to this, and it talks about all the adaptations that like animals get. And it just talks about basic information that you know, such as like animals evolve to get along for your survivals. And the most important topic to know is survival of the fittest, meaning that if you're fit for the environment, you survive and then you get to reproduce more from there. And so that's how most animals become either endangered or they become overpopulated. This consists 13 to 20% in the test. So it is actually pretty big, but it is a simple topic. I suggest you to read a lot about it since it is pretty easy compared to other topics that are mentioned. And the last unit is Unit 8, which is ecology. It is kind of related to evolution from the previous unit. As you can tell, everything is related. So it is really important. So never to skip a unit just because you think it may be easy or not, because it is connected to all the other topics in the AP Biology exam. This chapter mainly talks about energy flow, such as how like energy flows from the bottom to top of like food pyramid. And it also talks about ecosystem dynamics. And it talks about how the ecosystem is made of parts of soil. It basically goes into environmental science a little bit. This is only 10 to 15% of the exam, so it is a bit smaller than natural selection and all you have to know. But there is more memorization to this than the previous Unit 7, because Unit 7 is more about logic. It's logic to know that the survival is the most fit for the environment, which is why there are differences in evolution and things like that. But it also talks about invasive species, so it does relate back to the previous chapters. So a lot of students find biology as a hard topic, and most students who kind of struggle with memorization do not like biology or think they are not fit for it because of the memorization process. However, it's kind of actually different because biology is not only about memorization. You have to memorize things, but it is also about how well you're being able to understand the concept. So it mainly consists of like half memorization and half actually understanding. It is not only about memorization. It is much more than that. It is about understanding the concepts, and you do need to have personal interest to learn about biology. So I do recommend kids who actually are interested in STEM field to take AP Biology. If you're not, and if you're willing to take another major in college or apply to college for another major, AP Biology is not meant for you because it is for people who are passionate about biology. So another thing about AP Bio is that if you learn AP Biology, it really helps you in your college education because first of all, you get a whole foundation. It's everything about the basics of biology. And so when you actually go to college, you also get credit for it if you get a good score and you get to skip the beginning biology classes. And that's the reason many people also take AP Biology. It sets as a basic biology knowledge, and you can actually take more advanced classes earlier than people who didn't take AP Biology or didn't get a good score at the exam. So a few tips I can give you as a previous AP Bio student is that please listen in class. Teachers usually give the slides that you learned in AP Biology at the end of the class. A lot of kids think that they could just read the slides and just memorize it, but it's really important that you actually understand instead of just thinking that you could just look at the slides and prepare for the test. Like you actually have to listen to lecture and take really good notes, and always look back at your notes. And if you have things that you don't know for the exam, then please go ask your teacher, and also make sure to use really good time of your teacher's office hours. That's when usually teachers help students out if they have any questions, or go to your teacher during lunch, ask them all the questions you need. It is very important to make sure you know everything. And also it's good to study in study groups because there are times where you might not know a lot of stuff and you have limited access to help. So a lot of kids form study groups and you get to study together, ask questions, test each other. It builds a stronger foundation. For FRQs, I heard a lot of students struggle with it. The best thing to do here is that you gotta just solve a lot of FRQ questions. Look at the answer keys and compare your answers to the answer keys, and make sure you get to write all the information. Go on the internet, search up College Board, and look at previous College Board AP exams and solve them, go through them, and make sure to manage time because a lot of the AP questions take some time to understand and comprehend. Just make sure to have really good time management while you're solving these questions. So if you are a 12th grader or any other student taking the AP exam soon, good luck with the exam, and I hope you get a good grade on it because it will be worth it.